During a recent press conference, Karoline Leavitt, Trump's White House press secretary, addressed various issues and responded to questions from journalists. She started by highlighting the administration's efforts to cut federal waste. She strongly criticized Democrats for pretending to be outraged over budget cuts while remaining silent about American citizens in need. Leavitt pointed out that taxpayer money had been spent on questionable programs, including $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million for a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, and $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. She emphasized that the administration was focused on putting Americans first and ensuring funds were allocated to real national priorities. At this point, a journalist asked about President Trump's stance on foreign entanglements, particularly regarding Gaza. The journalist noted that Trump had historically criticized nation-building and questioned whether this plan contradicted his "America First" foreign policy. In response, Leavitt rejected the idea that the plan meant U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts. She clarified that the president had not committed to putting troops on the ground in Gaza nor to using American taxpayer money to fund its reconstruction. Instead, she explained, the administration was working with regional partners to ensure long-term peace in the Middle East. Leavitt described the approach as an out-of-the-box idea that reflected Trump's leadership style, stating that the same failed solutions had been proposed for decades with no success. She reiterated that Trump was determined to strike a deal and that he was already in discussions with leaders in the region. Following Karoline Leavitt's remarks on Gaza, another journalist pressed her on whether President Trump had completely ruled out deploying U.S. troops in the region. Leavitt reiterated that the president had not made any commitment to sending American forces but maintained that the administration was actively negotiating with Middle Eastern partners. When asked about which foreign leaders supported Trump's plan, she stated that Trump had already spoken with key figures, including the King of Jordan, the President of Egypt, and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. She noted that the president expected countries like Egypt and Jordan to temporarily accept Palestinian refugees while Gaza was rebuilt. At this moment, a journalist displayed images of Gaza, describing the region as an apocalyptic scene and questioning whether Trump genuinely believed displaced families could live there under such conditions. Leavitt acknowledged the humanitarian crisis, adding that Trump's decision stemmed from his commitment to peace and economic development for all people in the region. The press conference then shifted to domestic issues when a journalist brought up concerns about Democratic lawmakers' reactions to recent policies. The journalist referenced statements from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Senator Chris Van Hollen, who had used strong language, suggesting that the situation might escalate into street protests and violence. Leavitt condemned these remarks, arguing that if Republican leaders had made similar statements, the media would be in an uproar. She accused Democratic officials of inciting unrest and called for accountability, stressing that Trump's policies aimed to make government spending more efficient. She also reaffirmed that Elon Musk, who had been appointed to oversee government efficiency, was working closely with the administration to cut wasteful expenditures. The press conference continued with a journalist asking Karoline Leavitt about concerns regarding Dogecoin engineers allegedly having access to U.S. Treasury systems. The journalist sought clarification on whether these engineers had read-only access or if they could modify critical financial data. Leavitt firmly denied that Dogecoin engineers had any ability to alter Treasury systems, emphasizing that they were not authorized to write new code. She assured reporters that the administration had taken all necessary security measures. The conversation then shifted to immigration policy, as another journalist brought up reports that some illegal immigrants arrested under Trump's enforcement measures were not being deported but instead released with ankle monitors or check-in requirements. They asked whether this meant the administration was arresting more people than they could detain. Leavitt acknowledged the reports and confirmed that out of over 8,000 arrests, only 461 individuals had been released. She explained that factors such as medical conditions, lack of detention space, and low likelihood of deportation played a role in these decisions. However, she reassured the press that Trump remained committed to deporting as many illegal immigrants as possible and called on Congress to increase funding for ICE and Border Patrol to expand detention facilities. A journalist then challenged Leavitt on Trump's Gaza policy, pointing out that Palestinians were adamant about not leaving their homeland despite the administration's position that they should temporarily relocate. The journalist referenced Trump's recent comments that he was willing to use the military if necessary and asked if the U.S. was prepared to forcefully remove Palestinians from Gaza. Leavitt responded that Trump's plan was about rebuilding Gaza for all people in the region, not forcibly removing anyone. She blamed Hamas for the destruction in Gaza, stating that their brutal attack on Israel had led to the devastation. She described Trump as a peacemaker-in-chief and reiterated that the administration was working with allies to find a solution. As the press conference continued, a journalist followed up on Trump's military stance regarding Gaza, asking why he wouldn't simply rule out deploying U.S. troops. Leavitt responded by saying that Trump was a skilled negotiator who preferred to keep all options on the table to maintain leverage in discussions. The journalist then pointed out that many leaders in the region opposed Trump's plan, referencing the Jordanian deputy prime minister, who called it a declaration of war on the Arab people. Leavitt downplayed the criticism, stating that Trump had successfully negotiated deals before, despite initial resistance. She noted that King Abdullah of Jordan was set to meet with Trump next week, suggesting that diplomacy was ongoing. Attention then shifted to Trump's newly signed executive order on transgender participation in sports. A reporter asked whether the order would impact the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles and if transgender women would be allowed to compete in women's categories. Leavitt confirmed that Trump expected the Olympic Committee and NCAA to stop allowing transgender women to compete in female sports. She described the executive order as a public pressure campaign on sports organizations to do the right thing and protect women's athletics. She also defended the order against criticism from human rights groups, arguing that young women had already been exposed to discrimination by being forced to share locker rooms and compete against biological males. Another journalist raised concerns about U.S. government funding for media organizations, revealing that USAID had subsidized over $8 million in Politico subscriptions using taxpayer money. Leavitt responded by confirming that the administration was canceling these payments as part of its efforts to cut wasteful spending. Toward the end of the conference, Leavitt was asked about comedian Amber Ruffin being selected as the entertainment for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Ruffin had previously mocked Trump, referring to him as a toddler with his pants pulled down. Leavitt described the choice as interesting and said she had yet to discuss it with Trump. Finally, a journalist questioned how the administration planned to enforce the new executive order at the local level and what would happen to schools that refused to comply. Leavitt made it clear that compliance was expected because the order would become federal law within hours. With that, the press conference concluded, marking another tense yet direct briefing from Karoline Leavitt.